Cecil Hurt. Good morning, Cecil. How are you?
Morning,
Hey,
Cecil.
Barry, how are you?
I'm good.
Morning, Cecil.
Hey, Coach. How are you?
I'm okay. You?
I'm good. Ready to head to Nashville.
Well, Cecil, you're not going to get to go interview the guys in the locker room. I guess you saw that, right?
Yeah, I'll survive.
Just talk about this whole situation. Do you think this is going – I think the Kentucky fans will come regardless. I think it
oh, yeah, I do, too. It's an expensive ticket that you've already bought, and if they're playing the games and tell you can come, they're not giving you a refund, so they'll come.
Yeah, Deb.
Well, kind of a wide open tournament, I guess, a little bit. Everybody, thinks Kentucky wins because they have home court advantage. But it's always that way. The feeling for me is that you have to be able to convince your kids or get your kids to understand that they don't need to buy a plane ticket to Florida for the spring break because they're not going anywhere. I think the main thing is for the coaches and the players to understand it's a big deal. That's what I tried to do with it, is make it a big deal. And to me, that's a start to a lot of things you have to do to get ready for the game, like not suspend Robert Ory, but you got to be ready. You got to want to go to the tournament. You got to feel like the tournament's important, Cecil.
Yeah, I think that's true. And obviously you've got experience in having done that. And I think most teams will. I think Alabama, I'm hopeful that they'll look at it as an opportunity. They did not play well last week, and that they'll look at it as an opportunity to bounce back and play better. I don't know if I'd say wide open, but Kentucky could certainly lose. First of all, I don't know what Hagen's status is going to be. He didn't play against Florida last week, and he makes a difference for them.
Yeah.
And over a 3-game stretch, and they don't have the shooters that they've had sometimes.
They don't.
They aren't going to just come out and when Alabama played them in St. Louis and they're just raining threes from everywhere, or when they played them with Monk and De'Aaron Fox, they don't have those kind of shooters. Now they've got good players. They're not going to show up without good players. And they do have the home court advantage, but Auburn was able to win up there last year. So you look at it, and if somebody else plays well, certainly one of those teams that just mathematically you've got a lot better chance of winning 3 games than you do 4 or 5.
Well, you do. If I was doing the game, as you know me well enough, you followed us, I'd be talking different than on the radio. But I do think this is a basketball team that is good. Not one of their great teams, and it's one of their teams that has played spasmodically at times, doesn't shoot that many threes, shot the least number of threes in the league, but not as big, and to get the big guy in foul trouble, they drop down a little bit but of course, naturally you take it one game at a time, and that's the key for Alabama, is to be darn sure that they're ready to play a Tennessee team that plays hard. They don't shoot it very well from the 3 spot. But they play hard, and they're pretty smart, and they play a little bit better at times. So it should be a pretty tough basketball game. I just forget the first game. I know 2-point game or something, but it's a team you can beat. It's a team that can beat you very quickly.
The result of the first game, Kyrie hit a 3 at the end and made it look a little closer. But what happened? What they can't do. Tennessee just dominated them in the second half on the inside.
Yeah.
Fulkerson and Pons. I think Tennessee didn't miss many shots, and they offensive rebounded 56% of the ones that they missed.
Yeah.
So you just couldn't get a stop on them, and that's the key. Herb Jones didn't play in that game. He may give Alabama a little bit more rebounding, but you just can't let those two. Fulkerson's played really well, just about starting with that game, and giving them a present. They want to get it inside to him, get it up on the glass, and let Yves Pons go get it. Their guards aren't super. They're not very deep. So they have some areas of concern, and they've got to defend. If they're going to play those two big guys, Alabama's got to make those big guys come out of the perimeter and defend some.
Yeah.
We're talking obviously with Cecil Hurst. Cecil, I thought your article yesterday, tournament time has changed for Alabama and it's not been a good trend, was an excellent article. And, you talk about the expectations, and you're right. You got to win your home games. You can't get off to lose to Penn to start the season. And then you go and drop 2 in Atlanta, so you're working from behind. You talked about the psychological part of the season, but your third part, and I think it is the most critical. I think you said it was that we're on the brink of becoming Ole Miss, but Ole Miss has that new arena there. It is.
I like their arena.
Yeah, I haven't been in their arena, but people brag about it. I heard people tell me Virginia's got the best one in the country that they've seen, but I hadn't been there either. But
I hadn't been to Virginia. I'll tell you, it's got one that would be really suitable as Xavier.
Yeah,
if you've ever been up there, holds about 10,000. They got the skyboxes; they're right on top of you. So there are starting to be a few more around the country. Not everybody in the league has a brand new, shiny facility. LSU's is not new, but it's a tough place to play. The students are right on top of you on that end. Georgia has spent a lot on the interior of theirs. It's still Stegman, but you don't recognize it really from the interior. But Alabama is the core of the building is 52 years old, and it just they've done some renovations, and I understand that, and I understand how expensive it is to tear down and build new. But sooner or later, time is time. You got a car and you love it, but sooner or later, you got to get a new car.
Yeah, I just think you have to look at it. If this was football, what would you do? You'd build the best facility in the country. And so I like your last time. It's time for concrete plans about when the concrete will be poured. And I guess they're going to say, well, you got to have the money before you can pour the concrete. How close are we really to that? And is it, based on your conversations with Greg Byrne, is it definitely going to be renovate, or they still got maybe building a new arena on the table?
It all depends on the money. I think if they can raise enough funds, they'll do as much as they can. And if they really feel like they can build new without going into overwhelming debt, that's the issue. They'll build new, but it's expensive to build. And Greg Byrne knows this. This isn't something that I thought up, and he woke up and said, "Yeah, we need to start looking at that." They clearly are looking at it, but they need to tell people what it's going to be and when it's going to be, because you can always say it's going to happen, and they've been talking about it for 10 years off and on. Mark Gottfried talked about it when he was coach. Times have changed. The expectations people have for an arena have changed. What they've got, and Coach Sanderson may disagree with me, but what they've got, certainly the way they have it configured, is too big. You don't get very many crowds of 15,000 if you get one at all during the course of the year, and so many of them are so far back. They're just so deep in those corners and so far away from the floor that you just don't get kind of home court advantage that you need, and the kind of atmosphere for recruits that you need. So, the financial part of it, is easy for me. The easiest thing in the world is for me to spend somebody else's $150 million and say, do this or do that. But I do think it needs to be a priority, and not just when we finish this project for football, and football does bring in the most money, no question about it. But it can't just be when we finish this project for football and that project for football, then we'll see. You need to make it a priority, not necessarily in the sense that it's the very first thing that you do, but that you put it on the agenda and tell people when it's going to be and what it's going to be, and enable Nate Oates to tell recruits this is what it's going to be and when it's going to be.
Yeah, no doubt. I think you got to have a date on it, and then we got to get this money raised by here because there's a date here, and so
Right? Yeah.
that makes people say, "Oh my gosh, we got to get to working," and people say, "We got to get to giving." If there's a date there, but when it's open ended, to me, it just makes it feel like it's never going to happen. I know eventually will, but there's
a big difference in what you'll do for the kids this Christmas and when you start saying, well, next Christmas, Christmas after that.
Yeah.
You're not going to set aside that money.
Yeah. Dad will get mad at me, but I think of course you'll never know this, but if you had an arena where the students were all the way around the court, I don't think you lose all those games. I don't think you lose to Penn and Tennessee and Texas A&M. You might drop a game here and there, but I think the atmosphere gets you over the hump in games.
No, I agree with that. I don't disagree.
Yeah, Auburn lost one home game this year. They've got that kind of atmosphere, and you got to have players too.
Sure, but Alabama does based on what the SEC put out yesterday. They got
that's a they do have good. All those guys deserve it. Let me say that, particularly when the coaches. And this isn't taking anything away. Certainly, Kyra made all the first team, and I was glad to see John make the coach's second team. But you got 18 guys that are first or second team.
True.
Everybody in the league would like to have 18 guys on their roster.
That's a great point.
So I'm a little bit more of a 10 guy. Now, I will say the coaches did that all defensive team that Herb Jones made, and deservedly so, and did a 5-man team. And I'll tell you what, I'd take those 5 and play some defense. That's a heck of a defensive team.
Yeah,
with Herb and Okoro, and you'd be good enough offensively too.
Yeah,
Herb and Okoro and Hagan, and then those 2 guys at the rim, Pons and Richard.
Yeah,
you'd be pretty good.
Yeah, that.
Of course, I don't know what's going to happen next year. Nobody else does. But if you want to continue to play the way that they're playing, I think that's a good way to play because certainly the fans enjoy it. And I think when you get beat, they have more tendency to come out and watch them play than when I was coaching. When we didn't do that as well. But if Lewis were to leave and Petty were to leave, I don't know if they will. I don't know either one of them will. But if they were to. And, of course, the bowling kid from West Virginia is leaving. He's a senior. Would just leave what I would refer to as 2 shooters, for sure. I think the big thing for Alabama, if they continue to play that way, is to. And I don't know if those 3 kids are. I don't know. I know one of them's gone, but I don't know if the other 2 are gone or not. But you need to know that in your recruiting process if you want to continue to play that way.
Yeah, they do. Now I will say this: those guys. And not at that talent level necessarily. It's not just a guy as good as Kyra Lewis or John Petty just lying around, but you can find guys at that size range. You can find 6'1", 6'3". One thing they've got to have defensively is somebody at the rim that's going to protect the rim.
Sure do.
Because you can't play in this league without one.
No, you can't. Davis is getting better, but he's still not quite
he doesn't have any lift around the rim.
No,
he's not a real shot blocker. And you look at the teams that have gotten the bye and are in there. Kentucky's got them. Auburn, particularly with Wiley, he makes a big difference for them. LSU doesn't have one. They did last year with Naz Reid. They missed Naz Reid, but they've still got 6'7", 6'8", 6'9", who are really athletic around that rim, and you can't just drive it in there on them. And Mississippi State has them. And those are your 4 teams that have buys. And if you don't have them, sooner or later it's just hard to defend it.
It's just impossible.
That's what they got.
The offensive boards become such a problem, and the other factor too is you can shoot the threes by going through a post man sometimes and give him a look before you throw it back outside. So they got to have strength.
I think ideally the way Nate Oates wants to play the floor, it gets touched inside, it gets moved around. And again, you're not going to get times are different, and you're not going to get shack down there. You're not going to get the recruits like that, or if you do, it's one and done. But people are finding those guys, and Alabama's got to have more presence around the rim defensively than they have.
Yeah, I think they've got to look at. Duke used to just say, we're just going to play you man-to-man. That's what we do. And they have better players than everybody, and they can get away with it. Well, even Duke now has gone to zone some. Right. So I think they got to look at the defensive end of the floor. Yeah. They were good enough offensively to win a lot of these games. Defensively, they weren't. And I just don't think they can dig their heels in and say, hey, I'm a man-to-man coach, and that's just what we do. You got to be able to change defenses to keep teams off guard, and maybe that'll be something they'll look at for next year.
I think the other factor too is we had, and I'm not trying to go back to us particularly, but outside Derek McKee, we had guys that you might play in the post, you might not. Benoit could play post, play forward, run with it, or he could too. And if you started to write down the position by position 1 through 5, you would have a hard time doing it because they all were, I guess you'd say, alike. Melvin Cheatham, Buck Johnson, right. Those kind of guys. So they all wanted to face the basket. None of them wanted to play with the back of the basket much, especially Robert. And Derek McKee, he was okay. But athletically, if you can find people that are athletic and running jumps like Cecil said, and can maneuver in there and really be quick in there and get the ball to him, I think that's the big key. You're right.
Yeah, and those are a little bit harder to find in recruiting, but they got to find a couple.
Yeah, so, they are hard to find. Hard to get after you find them.
Right, and you got to fight tooth and nail when you do find them.
Yeah,
everybody else will find them too. It's not like you used to. Not like you used to tuck them away in Elkmont or somewhere and nobody see them.
No, that's the truth.
Well, that transfer portal now, we didn't have that. So that at least you always can go to that and get a quick fix. When you didn't have that and you looked at what you had returning and you looked at what was left out there to sign, that would turn your hair gray. At least now you can go to the portal and get a guy that can come in. So that has changed college basketball a lot, hasn't it, Cecil?
It has. It's made a difference for people. Same thing holds true now. I think it's tougher. Florida got Blackshear out of the portal, which is he was probably the number one rated guy in the country that went through the portal because he was 6'8", 240, and had a good year for him. Ended up not making the All-SEC team, which I thought was interesting. But tougher to find those guys. But, for instance, if Kyra does decide to enter the draft, even with Quinterly, they're going to need another ball handler, another point guard, because they're losing Bolden, and need somebody. Can't have Quinterly playing 40 minutes a game, even if you say he's automatically the point guard. But that's the kind of player you can find in the portal. Somebody's point guard that's pretty good, pretty quick. He's a senior, 21, 22 years old. Those guys you can find easier than you can find a 6'9", 6'10" that can run the floor.
Yeah.
One thing I want to ask you before we let you go, football-wise, they got 4 quarterbacks. You know who they are. We all know. Is it in the back of your mind as the offensive coordinator and as the head football coach, as the running back coach, to be a little concerned about, how you handle these guys? It to me would be, if I had 4 forwards like that, it'd bother me a little bit to be sure I was getting things done with all of them. It's not an easy task, is it?
It's not. It's one of the differences. It's one of the issues. And again, I'm not comparing and saying this one's better than that one, but it's something Coach Saban has to deal with that Coach Bryant didn't really have to deal with.
No, he did.
Because you didn't have guys who, if they weren't starters, would just say, I'm transferring out.
Yeah.
You'd play behind the guy, or Coach Bryant might move you to the defensive back or whatever. But you didn't just go into every spring with one guy looking to be the starter and the other guys, if they're not the starter, looking around at their options.
Yeah, that's the reason I brought it up.
Yeah, and it's not just Nick Saban. It's everywhere.
Yeah,
you got to have a really good one to win the 2 or 3 or 4, you have to be really careful with that. So
we sure do.
It'll be interesting. And all kids are different, and some kids will stay longer. Jalen might have stayed a year longer than some kids would have stayed, although he ended up transferring to Oklahoma for that 5th year. But and that's with the rules now where you have a sit-out year if you're not a graduate. If they change that rule, then it's really just, spring practice is just free agency is all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Once you name a starter, guy's not the starter. Even if he's a freshman, he can transfer to let's say, Ole Miss and be the starter there. Then it's really going to be wide open.
Sure.
It's wide open, pretty wide open right now.
Well, Cecil, have safe travels. You heading up tonight?
I am. I'm going to pick up my credential. I'll see a little bit. I will not promise that I will see the very last dribble of game number 2. But
yeah.
I'm going to.
I'll promise for you won't. Well, if you see Dad and Sonny over there, make them buy you a meal.
I'm not going to see.
I'll do it.
Sonny will be over there. He's working on officials, getting ready for Auburn game.
Or maybe they'll take.
Yeah, Sonny's the funniest guy in America until he has to reach for the wallet.
That's exactly right. Yeah, he's ain't real funny then.
Yeah. Thanks, Cecil. Safe trip.
Appreciate it.
All right.
See you.
Thanks.